The most fundamental question, this question, who am I, is a question that, especially on the spiritual path, we ask ourselves, because it seems to be that when we look to find who I am, all we find are stories, thoughts, ideas, beliefs, memories of who we once were, words that other people have told us about ourselves. And we have a sense that none of that is real, or really who we are. So then we're asking, well, who am I really? If I'm not all these stories, then who am I really? And then, of course, we come across the practice of self-inquiry, of asking this question, recommended by many spiritual teachers. And this question is a very helpful one to ask, even not as a practice to ask, but just, it's a question that, in fact, we're all asking, even if we're not thinking that we're asking, even if we're not trying to ask consciously. We're constantly asking this question to ourselves and to each other, wherever we go, whatever we do. We're looking to other people to answer this question for us. In everything we do, we're looking for approval from other people, so that other people will say, yes, who you are is enough, or good, or beautiful, or clever. And then it fills the gap of that question. It answers that question temporarily, until, of course, the next thing happens, and then perhaps someone says, oh, actually, you're not so great. And then it confuses you, and perhaps you sink into, oh, okay, that's who I am now. I'm someone who's not so great, or there's something wrong with me, something missing. And then we go in search of the missing piece, and we think that, well, okay, if we can just find this missing piece, then I'll have the answer to who I am. So this goes on in every area of our lives, in our relationships. We're looking for love from the other, so that we can answer that question, who am I? I am lovable. I'm worthy enough to be loved. If you love me, well, then that must mean that I'm okay. I have the right to exist. I must be a good enough person. I have the right to take the space that I take. Until one day you say, oh, actually, sorry, I don't love you anymore. Then you fall into, I'm obviously not worthy. It was all a mistake, and it was all an illusion. I'm not lovable. Something wrong with me. I must look for the next person who can tell me I'm enough, or I'm worthy of love. Or in our work, right? Depending on our achievements. If we do a good job, we want our boss, or the people that we work with, or our customers, to buy our products, or to give us that stamp of approval, well done, good job. We want to be seen, we want to be recognized for someone who is doing a good job of whatever it is that we're doing, so that we can hold the label of, I am someone who does X. I'm this kind of person. So that we can have this identity, at least while we're at work. At least if we go to a party and we have a conversation with people over a drink, you ask each other, so what do you do for a living? Well, at least then you have something to say, someone to be. You can survive that situation, right? Those kind of conversations where the truth is you have no idea who the hell you are, but at least you have something to say. your family situations, in your family dynamics. Of course, we all have learnt to play certain roles within our family dynamics. So whenever we're in those roles, whenever we're in those situations, we play the same role. The victim, the downtrodden one, the one that other people are always treating badly, or the one who is in charge, the bossy one, control freak, or of course there are so many different kinds of identities that we play. And depending on who we're with, the situation that we're in, we are changing roles, we're changing identities all the time. We can change identities several times a day. So, who am I really then, if I'm changing identities all the time? If I don't ever really get a permanent answer from anybody outside of me, if I don't really get a permanent answer from the situations that I'm in, from life experience, because any experience of doing a good job or having some pleasurable experience is only ever going to be temporary and will never really fulfill this sense of dissatisfaction, this bottomless pit of not knowing, the emptiness of this question. Nothing will really permanently fill that gap. Nothing in this play of experience, at least. So then, who am I really? Well, then we come to the spiritual path, and sometimes, well, a lot of the time we assume that the spiritual path and those certain spiritual experiences, or the validation that we get in the spiritual world, somehow gives us a more worthy identity. But actually this is just a sneaky thing, because the spiritual identities can seem to be very sweet and beautiful. They can seem almost to be true. They can be so close, apparently so close to the truth, and yet a million miles away. Because no matter how peaceful you walk around, no matter what clothes you wear, how the white robes, or wearing a mala, or doing a perfect yoga position, or meditating for hours, or being told by a spiritual teacher that you have reached some special state. Whatever identity you seem to get is still only temporary. It's still of the world. It's still of this play of experience, even though the spiritual path seems to be pointing to what is beyond the play of experience. But whatever temporary experience you have, even spiritual experiences, are happening in the world, are happening as part of the play. So it's important not to be deluded by the spiritual path, even. No matter how tempting it is. But there's nothing wrong with even being deluded by the spiritual path or any other identity that we take on for a while. There's nothing wrong with playing any of these identities, as long as you know that this is just an identity that I'm playing. If you know that, then there's nothing wrong. You can play any and every identity. They do play, right? Whether you think that you should play them or not, they do. They get triggered, right? So you're playing all these different identities, but if you know that really who you are really is none of them, and you don't take them seriously, then they can play. They are a play of whichever identity is filling the center stage in that moment. playing as if this is who I am now. As if. That's the key. Because it's all a play as if. And you, who you really are aware of whatever is filling the space in this play of experience. You are seeing it all. You know whatever is appearing. You don't need to fix any of it. You don't need any of it to be cleaned up or changed. All of these identities can be here. They're only a problem if you take them seriously. They're only a problem if you really believe this is who I am. And then I need to fix myself, I need to improve myself, I need to get love and approval and attention from outside. Then you're running with this identity, you're really believing in it. You're believing that you could actually find the answer to this question of who I am from the outside or from your experience. Once you see, through perhaps years of disappointment and delusion, and you see that this question cannot be answered in this play of experience, it just cannot. This is disappointing, but it's also very freeing. Because you no longer expect it to be answered. So the question can keep being there. In other words, these identities can still play out, but you don't ever expect them to be fulfilled. You don't ever expect an identity that comes up or a role that you play to come to some kind of permanent rest, to find peace. Because you know that the real peace and rest is actually who you are, that is aware of all these identities, the whole play of experience, in fact. And in knowing that, then everything can be here. It's the great freedom for the whole mess of humanity to be here. For it to be messy. And in that knowing of, or seeing of, awareness of it, it's also an unconditional love. Who you are as life itself, awareness, is aware of whatever is here. In other words, unconditionally sees it for what it is, embraces it just the way it is. So there's no need to try to embrace or try to love everything that's here. It's already loved. Even if you don't feel loving, even if you don't like it, even that not liking is unconditionally accepted just for what it is. You are simply aware of what is here. So in other words, awareness is the same thing as unconditional love. Which is strange for the thinking to grasp. Because usually if we think of awareness, we think of something kind of a bit dry. It has like a dry sense about it that, you're a bit distant. Whereas if we think about love, then we think about it as being sort of very juicy and exciting or feeling good and loving. But actually awareness isn't distant. It is an absolute embrace, a holding of whatever is here. And unconditional love isn't particularly exciting. It just simply sees and knows it all to be what is here. So this is really the answer to this question of who I am. Who am I? I am this awareness, but I'm not the concept of awareness or unconditional love. I'm not something that can be grasped in thought. So I'm not an answer to any question. This can never be known in thought. So no matter how much you practice self-inquiry or asking this question, you can never, with your thinking, grasp the answer. So even if you think that you have grasped it, it's not that. It's never that. Whatever you think you are, it's never that. So that's really quite simple, you know. Whatever you think, you're not. That can be your mantra in a way. You know. You're not whatever you think. But you play as if you are. And that play goes on. In that knowing of it all.